don't have to remind the committee what October of 2008 was like. We had had the government intervention in Royal Bank of Scotland. Yeah. We had the government intervention in Lloyd's.
Okay. I am actually asking you a question.
Sorry,
about what
I should have been more direct. I apologize.
What you took to mean by the phrase Whitehall. When you wrote that down.
On October 31st, 2 days later, the fundraising from the Middle East was completed. So within the context of this market, there was a worry that if people in Whitehall, which in my mind are officials in the government.
Right, that's all I was asking.
Sorry.
We've now arrived at the answer. You think it was officials. Okay. The note from Mr. Tucker says that he felt your LIBOR returns could be lower, doesn't it?
He felt that our LIBOR rates relative to the other 15 posters
could be relatively lower.
Yeah.
Yeah? Why then on page 2 of your note to this committee yesterday did you say you don't believe you received an instruction?
I didn't believe it was an instruction.
So what was it, a nod and a wink?
The most important thing of that note to me, Chairman, was the comment that there was a perception in Whitehall that our rates were high, and the worry that I shared with John that if members of the government thought were told our rates were high relative to others, and if they then took that to mean that we couldn't fund or were having trouble funding, and I have to be very patient here, when in fact we were funding adequately in one of the worst market environments, well, the worst market environment that I had ever been a part of in 30 years in banking. And it was clear that a number of the firms who were posting had emergency loans or had been nationalized or were having trouble funding, and yet we were posting the highest level. Then, as I said to Paul, we are funding at those levels, but we would question whether some of the other institutions can actually get funds at the levels they're posting. If I can just finish for a second.
My question's about what you took that,
implication of
what
that
you
for
took
Whitehall.
that to mean. I mean, if I read it out to you, your LIBOR returns did not always need, do not always need to be as high as we have recently.
And I think what Paul was
pretty clear, which in other words, your LIBOR returns could be lower.
Well, if you look at one more page in here, just so I can make your point even more, because I think it's the right point. So if you look at page 22, which are the LIBOR submissions of 16 banks that submit 3-month dollar LIBOR, which was the question at the time. And if you look at the top of that page and that line that goes across, that's the Barclays submission. And here is the important point. In October 2008, when Barclays was funding adequately, probably as well as any international bank and as well, or probably close to as well as any bank that submitted, and there were banks here that were posting levels lower than this, even those that were nationalized. And 100% of the days in October 2008, 100% of the days, we were the highest post in LIBOR or the next to highest. It's really important, Chairman, if you can bear with me. To hear some of the comments that have been made that Barclays was lowering their submissions for their reputation or things like that. Barclays during that month was reporting levels at which they were borrowing. And yet 15 firms, 100% of the days, 14 or 15 firms, 100% of the days were reporting at levels lower than that. And some of those banks couldn't fund at any level. We were worried
we know that others are up to this.
No, that wasn't the point.
Mr. Dyer, okay, if you could get to the point.
If Whitehall then was told Barclays is at the highest of LIBOR, without knowing all that I just went through, they might say to themselves, my goodness, they can't fund. We need to nationalize them, as they had nationalized other British banks. This was a very important period. We weren't desperate. We had £6.7 billion in equity being raised. Or if rumors got on the market that we couldn't fund, maybe we couldn't complete the equity raising. So the single most important financing that Barclays has had, I think.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Sorry.
You don't think you received an instruction. You don't think it was even a nod and a wink, even though it reads that way to almost anyone who looks at it. But you were monitoring LIBOR daily, weren't you, Mr. Diamond? If you were
I'm sorry?
monitoring LIBOR daily and your returns by then, keeping a very close